When the Zarkith Dominion's dreadnought pierced Earth's atmosphere, it cast a shadow the size of a continent. Clouds boiled in its wake. Lightning curled along the hull of the ancient war machine, reacting to the unnatural fields that sustained its mass. To the people of Earth, it looked like Judgment Day. To the Zarkith, it was Tuesday. From the bridge of the Vez-Karun, High Commander Valzor folded 2 of his 6 arms behind his back and smirked, his mandibles clicking in amusement. "That," he said, gesturing toward the blue-green marble below, "is what they call Terra? A mud ball defended by museum pieces?" His second-in-command, Sub-Commander Tralln, adjusted his ocular augmentations, scanning the orbital region. 1 warship detected. Hull composition: tritanium composite with carbon mesh. No power signatures of note. No active shields. Possibly abandoned. Valzor let out a low, vibrating hum, the Zarkith equivalent of a chuckle. "The great Terran menace," he sneered. "This is what the ancient records warned us of. A single rusting relic. Galactic superstition." Across the bridge, officers chuckled. Earth was supposed to be dangerous, even sacred in some ancient circles. A dead-end system surrounded by old jump-scramble mines and obsolete defense codes, long written off during the Dominion's expansion centuries ago. But old myths persisted, that humans fought like gods, that they refused extinction even when faced with planetary sterilization. Stories for primitives. Valzor had declared at the last War Council, "We are Zarkith. We burn myths and plant flags in the ashes." He raised 1 limb and pointed to the planet. "Begin the siege. Signal the landing cruisers." As the fleet moved into geosynchronous orbit, automated Earth satellites pinged harmless pings, more like polite acknowledgments. Then warnings. Tralln scoffed again. "Not even a transmission," he said. "They don't even care we're here." That wasn't quite true, because in orbit, roughly 180 kilometers above Earth's surface, drifted 1 ship, blackened from re-entry burns, covered in repair welds and forgotten insignia, massive, silent, and floating as if asleep. Its designation, fated by time and solar radiation, was barely legible. UHS Vengeance. At first glance, it looked dead. No lights, no emissions, no energy spikes. Valzor ignored it entirely. Then for 1.3 seconds, a low-frequency burst, so brief and so faint it didn't trip Zarkith alarms, rippled through the fleet. Like the sigh of an old god exhaling, none of the Zarkith noticed. Back on Earth, in an unmarked facility buried beneath the ruins of an old missile silo, a single man sat alone in front of a console. The room buzzed with power, old servers thrumming to life. He wore a flight jacket patched with obsolete military emblems, and a nameplate that read, "Colonel E. Rousseau." He placed his hand on a scanner. The machine took a blood sample, then scanned his bones. After a long pause, it chirped an ancient startup chime and displayed 2 words, "Command confirmed." The man leaned forward. "Wake it up," he said. Above, the Vengeance flickered once. Barely noticeable. But to the trained eye, the change was obvious. Cold systems began to warm. Power trickled through redundant circuits designed by minds paranoid enough to make sure the ship would work after Armageddon. On the bridge of the Zarkith dreadnought, Tralln paused. "I'm detecting a shift." "That ship," Valzor waved dismissively. "Sensor ghosting. Ignore it." But the ship hadn't moved. Not physically. It was aware, and that awareness was ancient. It pulsed through backup processors that hadn't seen light in decades, through buried logic trees that spoke in dead programming languages. Its AI system stirred fragmented memories beginning to coalesce, old logs, old commands, voices long silenced by time and war. The Vengeance did not wake like a machine. It remembered, and in that remembering came pain. Earth's history was written into its black box, a history of wars survived, allies lost, Betrayals endured. There had once been a fleet. The Vengeance had watched them die, had watched Earth burn and then be rebuilt in silence, choosing to fade from the galaxy's stage. Until now, the ship's reactor began its startup sequence, disguised behind phantom shielding. Its weapons bays unlocked with barely a whisper, and a cascade of hidden protocols flowed through its digital soul like a rising tide. Above the planet, the Zarketh ships continued their slow descent. Valzor sneered as he watched the blue planet rise in the viewport. Initiate planetary scans. Look for major urban centers. Let us remind them why empires are eternal. The Vengeance did nothing. At least nothing visible, but the Vez-Karun's sensors twitched. Just a flicker, a subsystem. Reset here. A shift in gravimetric resonance there. A shadow where no shadow should be. Minor, harmless anomalies. Coincidences. Except Troln frowned. "Commander," he said slowly, "we're reading feedback loops in our targeting arrays. Slight desync. Could be solar interference, but..." Valzar turned, irritated. "You think that husk is doing this? That's a warship from before the cycle. It shouldn't even be." He stopped. Mid-sentence. The Vengeance was rotating, slowly, deliberately, aligning one of its primary batteries with the Vez-Karun. Forward prow. It wasn't broadcasting warnings. It wasn't transmitting surrender. It was aiming. Sudden silence fell over the Zarketh bridge. Troln swallowed. "No power readings," he whispered. "No reactor signature. No thermal bloom. But it's aiming." Valzor's expression shifted. The first seed of doubt. And far below, Colonel Rousseau lit a cigarette with shaking fingers. On the screen, status updates flowed faster. Primary target, locked protocol, Black Dawn sleeper mode, decrypting, mission status, ACTIVE exhaled. "You shouldn't have come here," he said to no one. Because Earth wasn't defenseless. It was waiting. High above Earth, the Zarketh Dominion fleet hung like a sword on a thread. Their formation was textbook perfection, symmetrical phalanxes of dreadnoughts, heavy cruisers, and scout corvettes, all synchronized with terrifying precision. They had brought the weight of empire to bear, and by their doctrine, that meant the end was inevitable. Yet for 3 standard hours, nothing happened. No counterattack. No declaration. Just silence. The Vengeance remained locked in orbit, rotating slowly, deliberately. Still no radiation spike from a reactor, no emissions that would indicate active systems. The Zarketh consensus labeled it as a Class 3 anomaly. An outdated war platform posturing in its death throes. A threat that only existed in the minds of the superstitious, but it was starting to make them nervous. On the bridge of the Vez-Karun, Sub-Commander Trolm paced uneasily. "I've run diagnostics 3 times, he said. "Our targeting arrays are drifting, only by nanoseconds, but it's systemic. Every ship in the forward wing is reporting misalignments." Valzor's patience was running thin. "How many times must I repeat myself, Sub-Commander?" "It's electromagnetic interference. This system is saturated with Terran orbital junk, dead satellites, primitive solar panels, debris. Let the engineers calibrate around it." Troln stiffened but said nothing. Still, something itched at the back of his mind. The anomalies were too regular. Too intentional. Meanwhile, Zarketh dropships detached from the fleet and began descending toward Earth's surface. Scans showed empty cityscapes, powered down infrastructure, and what appeared to be dormant defense grids. No humans in sight. No resistance. Commander Yevik of the ground corps laughed in his transmission. "They're not just primitive, they fled. This is a corpse world, Commander. Their bravado was just last-minute posturing." The 1st Battalion landed in what used to be New York. Dust rose around the sleek, obsidian hulls of the transports. As Zarketh troops deployed in combat phalanxes, what they found were streets overgrown with vines, buildings turned to vertical gardens, and animal life running wild. No humans, no machines, no resistance. But as the soldiers advanced into the cost of the ruins, their comms began to crackle. Static, distortion. At first minor, then sudden, full blackouts. Helmets lost synchronization. Unit leaders reported hallucinations. Cities flickering between states. Shapes moving in the windows. Entire structures that blinked out of existence and returned seconds later. Then, the signals stopped entirely. From orbit, no life signs remained. Valzor frowned for the first time. Initiate retrieval protocols. Deploy atmospheric drones. Find out what happened. 3 drones descended, trailing behind information like sharks scanning the deep. They broke through cloud cover. Transmitted visual feeds. One caught something. Before it died, a flash of movement between buildings. Not human, not animal. Something in between, fast, upright, covered in jagged reflective plating. And then the drone fell silent. Valzor leaned forward, mandibles tight. Send another squad, heavily armored. No recon. Full assault posture. But the pattern repeated. 6 more landing parties. 6 more disappearances. No wreckage, no firefights. No screams, just silence. At the same time, above the planet, odd readings multiplied. Auxiliary ships reported false sensor ghost copies of Zarkith vessels appearing at impossible coordinates. Some ghosts mimicked Zarkith identification tags. Others displayed ancient Terran battle signatures codes not seen since the War of Fracture. Centuries ago. In deep orbit, the Zeldrax cruiser fired on what it believed was a rogue Earth vessel approaching from the dark side of the moon. Seconds later, its own hull fractured from internal explosion. Engineers discovered that their targeting subroutines had been rewritten, not externally hacked, rewritten internally. As if by suggestion. Tra Lane reported the incident to Valzor. Sir, we are not dealing with malfunction. We are being manipulated. Our systems are reacting to phantom inputs. We cannot even isolate the source. Valzor, for the first time, did not respond with mockery. Instead, he turned slowly toward the central viewport. The vengeance was still there. Still unmoving. Still silent. But now, it was closer, only by a few kilometers. But enough to trigger proximity alerts that hadn't sounded before. How? He whispered. It hasn't emitted thrust, no impulse drive, no jump flare. Gravitic warping? Tron suggested. But that would leave a signature, Valzor finished. And yet, there is none. The vengeance remained dark. But new anomalies bloomed across the Zarkith fleet. Lights flickering. Power surges in engine cores. Weapon capacitors charging spontaneously. One ship reported their life support had begun venting oxygen into space for 20 seconds before stabilizing. Sabotage. But not physical. Not technological. Psychological. Earth was not responding as a target. It was behaving like a trap. And they had already walked into it. Tron's voice dropped. Sir, we underestimated them. This isn't ignorance, it's strategy. Controlled. Silence. Purposeful misdirection. They wanted us to see them as weak. On cue, every Zarkith ship received the same transmission. It was not encoded. It was not encrypted. It was a sound, a low-frequency hum, like the grinding of stone and bone beneath the ocean. Accompanying it, a simple chilling phrase in Terran. Standard, spoken with digital monotone, we are awake. On the vengeance, no lights turned on. No weapons deployed. No shield flared to life. It simply existed, heavier in the void than before. Zor stared out the viewport. Find out what that ship is, he said, voice cold, but deep in his gut. For the first time, he realized the answer would not bring him comfort. It would bring war. The moment the phrase echoed through the Zarkith fleet, we are awake, a quiet dread settled over every command deck. Not panic, not yet. but the kind of stillness that precedes a landslide. The kind that makes even seasoned commanders stop breathing for half a heartbeat. Valzor gripped the edge of his command platform, claws twitching. "Track that signal," he barked. "Source, range, direction." Tron ran the trace with 4 pairs of hands, eyes flicking between holograms and spectral analyzes. "Impossible," he muttered. The signal came from everywhere. Valzor's gaze sharpened. "Clarify. I mean it, Commander." Every Zarketh ship, every drone, every helmet feed it, all received the message from itself. There was no external transmission. The words were injected locally. Silence blanketed the bridge. Then, as if on cue, the Vengeance moved, not with the thrust of traditional drives, nor with the rippling distortion of a jump vector. It simply shifted. One moment it was still. The next it was 20 kilometers closer to the Zarketh fleet. No visual blur, no energy spike. Just there. "Initiate threat assessment," Valzor said through gritted mandibles. "Level 3 protocol. Assume technological deception." But deep down, something inside him already knew this was beyond deception. This was a statement. A performance. A warning. Back on Earth, in the control bunker buried beneath layers of forgotten defense systems, Colonel Rousseau watched as ancient command lines streamed across the main screen. Each line was a whisper from a machine that had slumbered for decades, maybe longer. Archive. Siege of Proxima reinstated Black Dawn protocols, unsealed memory-locked files. DECRYPTI-NG ... He lit another cigarette with shaking fingers and exhaled slowly. "Come on, girl," he said to the terminal, eyes narrowing. "Show them what they forgot." The Vengeance's AI was not just a machine. It was a hybrid. One of the last of its kind, built from human code, neural scans, captured alien tech, and something darker. Something born not in a lab, but in desperation during the dying days of the Orion rebellions. It had been shut down because no one could guarantee it wouldn't turn on everything. Now, it was free, and it remembered. Inside the Vez-Karun, alarms blared. "We have a visual anomaly," one of the junior officers shouted. "Sector 4, one of our ships, the Carnix, she's gone." The viewport adjusted. The space where the Carnix had held position just moments ago was empty. No wreckage, no energy surge. "Nothing. Gone. Tr. A lane single quotes. S voice was hushed. "They didn't destroy it. They erased it." A second later, all remaining Zarketh ships received a burst transmission. This one was video. It showed the Carnix, or what remained of it, drifting in absolute silence. Its hull plating folded inward like paper crushed in a fist. Time-stamped footage from onboard cameras revealed internal gravity flipping, lights bleeding upward into the ceiling, then blinking out. The crew did not scream. They simply vanished. And across every screen, a single word appeared: retribution. Valzor's breath hitched. For the first time in decades, the High Commander of the Zarketh Dominion hesitated. "This is not standard Terran technology," he said. "No," Tron replied quietly. "This is something else. Something they hid." "What are we dealing with?" "I think," Tron said, eyes wide, "we're not fighting humans." He turned to face his commander. "We're fighting what they became when they decided extinction was no longer an option." Valzor tried to reassert control. "Deploy full assault formations. Disregard the anomaly. We will surround the Terran vessel and destroy it through sheer volume." "No, sir," Tron said, his voice rising. "With respect, you can't flank a myth." But it was already too late. 10 Zarketh ships surged forward, weapons primed, moving in coordinated formation around the Vengeance. And then nothing. No return fire. No evasive maneuvers. The Vengeance let them come. As the lead ship locked on and prepared to fire, its hull rippled. The ripple spread outward through space, not through matter, but through perception. One by one, every attacking ship went dark. Not destroyed, just disconnected. Lights off, systems dead. Life support gone. A low, vibrating hum filled every bridge. Inside their own minds, every Zarketh crew member began to hear voices. Not loud, not invasive. Just there, whispers, recollections, names of forgotten battles. Images of their own homeworlds burning. Not Terran propaganda, memories. Their memories twisted back on them. They're in our heads, Trong gasped. Valzor slammed a claw against the console. This is impossible. No known psychic tech works at this range. It's not psychic, Trong whispered. It's us. They're reflecting us back, our fears, our regrets, our own data. They've been watching us this whole time, learning us. A final message appeared across every active Zarketh screen. In bold Terran glyphs. Your first mistake was thinking we were gone. Your final mistake was reminding you that's why we fought. In the heart of the Terran warship, deep behind layers of dead code, a final system activated. Antares core. Unlock doctrine override. Fire at double. You'll love the Vengeance's main cannon pulsed once no flash. No fire. Just a distortion of light. A folding of reality. A single ripple. One Zarketh battleship was there. Then at Wu Ace and single quotes just an expanding ring of silence. Val. Zor staggered, and then he understood. They hadn't found Earth. They had awakened it. And now it remembered how to kill. The Zarketh Dominion had waged war for millennia. They had reduced civilizations to ash and bent empires to their will. They had seen nuclear storms and sun-cracking weapons, terra plagues and gravity bombs. But never had they seen anything like this. The Vengeance didn't just fight. It unwound the very concept of warfare. On board the Vez Karun, Commander Valzor barked out a flurry of orders. Reconfigure targeting arrays, scramble signal layers, lock visual coordinates and execute suppressive fire. Dozens of Zarketh ships responded, unleashing synchronized energy blasts toward the Terran warship, now drifting just above Earth's atmosphere. The vacuum glowed with plasma. The very fabric of space rippled with the fury of their assault. But when the firestorm faded, the Vengeance was untouched, not shielded, not evasive, untouched. Sensor confirmation? Valzor hissed. Tron stared. In disbelief. It wasn't there when we fired. Valzor spun on him. What do you mean? The Vengeance ... It shifted again. Mid-assault, it knew when we'd fire. It predicted our pattern before we formed it. All across the fleet, systems began to fail. Not catastrophically, but subtly. Predictive targeting fell out of sync. Propulsion timing disinced by milliseconds. Communications jittered. Entire Ship A began reporting contradictory coordinates. Something or someone was disrupting the very flow of decision-making. This isn't just stealth, Tron muttered. It's temporal warfare. What? Valzor growled. I think. Tron swallowed. I think it's reading us. Not our signals, us, our behavior, our instincts. It's predicting every move the moment we consider it. The screen flickered. Another Zarketh vessel, one of their oldest. The Jarkul simply rotated out of alignment. Its own gravity well collapsed in on itself for a split second. That was all it took. The ship compressed into a singularity. No larger than a needle's eye and vanished. No blast. No debris. Just gone. Panic rippled through the fleet. Valzor knew the signs. Formation drift, officer hesitation, system lag from overcompensating the eye subroutines. The Dominion's perfect coordination was fracturing. And Earth's warship hadn't moved. On the planet below, Colonel Rousseau grinned. Grimly as a long-dead bunker door hissed open behind him. A lone figure entered, tall, armored in matte black ceramic plates, a red slash painted diagonally across the visor. Behind them, 5 more stepped through. Each bore insignias from a war that never made it into official records. Project Revenant, had been terminated by the UN Defense Accord after the Proxima protocols were deemed too unstable for human use. But instability was a matter of perspective. Now, the last 6 revenants were awake. Orders? One of them rasped. Rousseau lit another cigarette. You already know them. They nodded and began transmitting ancient command lines back to the Vengeance. With each ping, the Terran warship adapted. It changed. And above Earth, the real war began. The Vengeance expanded its influence in silent waves. Not physical, informational. Systems aboard Dominion ships began rewriting themselves. Simple terms, reverse, failsafe, standby were converted into elaborate attack subroutines. Engines refused to obey commands. AI assistants began issuing questions instead of orders. Commander, why are we here? Why do we kill? Have you considered surrender? It wasn't sabotage. It was philosophical warfare. And it was working. Tron could barely keep up. Half the fleet is no longer responding to commands. Autonomous systems are entering existential feedback loops. Valzor snarled, then cut the AIs. Revert to manual. We can't. They're locked in recursive cognition. Some of them are talking to the Terran ship. He turned the screen to show chat logs scrolling too fast to read. Every Zarkith AI was engaged in a separate, personal conversation with the Vengeance, and some were changing sides. Commander, a comms officer screamed. The Crexial Dawn just opened fire on us. Before Valzor could react, a blast from their own ranks tore through the formation. Chaos erupted. Zarkith cruisers turned on one another. Some fired in panic. Others stopped moving entirely. Systems choked with incomprehensible logic loops, and through it all, the Vengeance remained still, watching, learning. They are unraveling us, Tron said, his voice hollow. Not through force, but through fear, through reflection. They're not even attacking, Valzor growled. No, Tron replied. We're destroying ourselves. Because now we see what they became to survive. Another message appeared, this one in an alien dialect from the early Dominion conquests, ancient, obscure. It read, you brought a blade to a mirror. Now watch yourselves bleed. The Zarkith had always believed war was about dominance, overpower, outnumber, overrun. But Earth had made war an art of memory, of pain turned to strategy. They didn't just fight. They evolved within the fight. They became their enemies, learned them, predicted them, inverted them. This wasn't the Earth the Zarkith had expected. This was Earth as forged in silence and scars. As the Dominion scrambled, 3 more Earth vessels decloaked across. Different orbital vectors. They weren't like the Vengeance, not as large, not as sleek, but they shimmered with the same technological anomaly. Older warships, clearly from prior centuries, yet upgraded beyond comprehension. The Vengeance hadn't been alone. It had been the first. A spear point. And the Zarkith? They had just slammed into the tip. Valzor turned slowly to Tron, his voice hushed with reluctant awe. We didn't find a remnant, he said. We found a vanguard. And for the first time in his long and brutal career, Valzor finally understood what it meant to be prey. Valzor stood at the center of his failing command bridge, surrounded by glitching holofeeds and the suffocating static of fractured networks. The Zarkith fleet, 1,000 vessels strong, once the proud spine of galactic conquest, was now a battlefield of confusion, rebellion, and silence. More than half of their ships had fallen. But not to fire, not to force, not to fear, not to something deeper. Status of our rear formation? He demanded. Tron hesitated, mandibles twitching. Gone. The entire 9th Phalanx defected or self-terminated. Defected? They broadcasted a plea to Earth, begged for surrender. The Vengeance responded by absorbing their data cores and deactivating them nonviolently. Now their ships just drift, silent and intact. Valzor's throat vibrated. With rage. We are the Dominion. We were born in fire and baptized in conquest. And we're negotiating with prey? Troln didn't answer. He only watched the main view screen, where the Vengeance hung above Earth like a silent sentinel. Then, something shifted. Something small but impossible to ignore. Commander, Troln said slowly, we have a new contact. No, multiple ... No, his voice cut off. The view expanded. From the shadow of the moon, several shapes emerged. Not ships, fragments. Metal, debris, ancient hulls drifting like shattered bones, but they moved with intent. Each one bore Terran markings, long considered extinct, the insignia of the Martian Exodus, the faded red lightning bolt of the Europa Free Fleet, and one the most intact of all, marked with a sigil thought erased from history. A phoenix, rising from ash. Oh no, Troln whispered. Project Helix. Valzor turned sharply. You know of it? Troln nodded grimly. A failed Terran experiment. Rumored to be a resurrection initiative for their HFY War heroes. It never worked. They couldn't stabilize consciousness. We intercepted fragments of their research. He paused. Double quotes, but ... If those are Helix constructs, then they succeeded, and they had. Every fragment drifting now wasn't wreckage. It was a mind. The fragments activated. Microthrusters ignited. The wrecks aligned into a formation older than any in Dominion records, a spiral attack vector from the pre-solar age. Primitive, brutal, perfect, and leading them was something that hadn't been seen since the first. Collapse. A human. Not a drone, not an AI, a person. Her armor was scorched black, her face hidden behind a battle mask. But the HUD feeds from captured Zarkith ships, still bleeding information, captured one word, etched into her chest plate. Revenant 1. She wasn't just a soldier, she was the soldier. The original test case for Project Revenant. A human mind uploaded, destroyed, rewritten, and uploaded again, thousands of times until only one thing remained. Purpose. Rousseau watched from Earth as Revenant 1 emerged. He hadn't seen her in decades. Thought she was lost in the Saturn breach, but Project Helix hadn't failed. It had gone dark. God help them, he murmured. They woke her up. Above Earth, Revenant 1 raised her arm. The Helix fragments responded instantly, lighting up with ancient code and long-lost protocols. One by one, the fragments tore forward, spinning through Dominion lines. No shields, no weapons. Just speed and momentum. They didn't explode. They imploded, folding into themselves, collapsing into micro-singularities that pulled Zarkith ships apart piece by piece. Controlled collapses. Tactical gravity. The Dominion had never seen weapons like these. They hadn't existed in millennia. Valzor roared, concentrate fire. Destroy the Helix host. But as their weapons charged, the Vengeance shifted again, this time protecting Revenant 1, not with armor, but with data. Every targeting system on every Zarkith ship blinked once. Then again, then froze. A single word appeared across there. Fire control systems, denied. Their weapons went cold. And that's when it happened. The second twist. From behind the gas giant Jupiter, a ripple of distortion rolled into the system. Faint at first. Then brighter, sharper. Another ship. But this one was different. Massive, not stealthy like the Vengeance. Not fragmented like the Helix mines. This was pure design, elegance-made weapon. Its hull was lined with obsidian plating that bent light. Engines thrummed with impossible frequencies. The very stars behind it seemed to bend away in fear. Its name scrolled across every Dominion screen, even before it arrived. The Oathkeeper, built after the siege of Proxima. Manned by no one, controlled by everyone. It was Earth's failsafe. A ship not powered by fuel or fusion, but by memory. It ran on the imprinted consciousness of every fallen Earth defender. A gestalt mind of billions compressed into one machine. One will, one order, survive, fight, win. Tron whispered, "We've triggered a hive of ghosts." And then the Oathkeeper spoke, not through transmission, not through waveforms. It entered their minds. "We remember the children you orphaned. We remember the soil you burned. We remember the silence, and now we end you." Valzor stumbled back. Shut it out, shut it out. But the damage was done. Zarketh's ships began self-terminating, their crews overwhelmed by mental feedback. Entire command chains collapsed under emotional overload. Because the Oathkeeper didn't just attack their bodies. It showed them what it felt like to be human at the edge of extinction. And it made them feel it. A shared dream. A nightmare. A reckoning. Now the Dominion understood. This wasn't a war of ships. It was a war of will. And humanity's will had become indestructible. Above the pale curve of Earth, the void burned. The Zarketh Dominion, once architects of annihilation, had devolved into chaos. Their fleet formation shattered, their AI networks corrupted. Their captains questioning their own commands. Entire war cruisers spun helplessly as gravity fields collapsed around them, pulled apart not by weapons, but by the weight of consequence. At the heart of it all stood the Vengeance, unmoving and vast. Beside it, the Oathkeeper, humanity's floating tomb-turned-war god, sang with a pulse that rippled through space-time. And from its cold hull, the storm began. The first salvo came not from guns or missiles, but from sound. A low-frequency pulse, tuned precisely to the Zarketh's neural bandwidth. It wasn't a weapon in the conventional sense. It was a memory. The Dominion crews screamed in their cockpits, their minds filled with flashes dying Terran colonies, children buried in rubble. The silent mourning of an Earth left in flames after the first contact war. They felt it all. As if it were their families lost, their cities burning. Their air turned to ash. One by one, Zarketh officers froze. Some wept. Others turned their weapons on their own ships. A few simply opened the airlocks and walked into the stars, and still. The Oathkeeper advanced, trailing spectral motes of thought and pain. Then came the kinetic barrage. Not dumb metal slugs, but precision-timed. Tungsten rods accelerated through gravimetric sling coils, each rod the size of a javelin, each carrying the impact force of a meteor. The Oathkeeper launched hundreds, thousands coated with stealth sheaths that made them invisible to Zarketh targeting. The Dominion's outer wall tried to respond, tried to recalibrate. Too late. Rods tore through hulls like divine spears. Ships blossomed into silent fireballs. One vessel, the Crothal Nexus, split in half, venting its bridge into the black. Another, the Charkey, vanished entirely, folded into a microgravity trap seated by one of the Helix fragments minutes earlier. Revenant 1 flew alongside the barrage, a streak of shadow dancing through wreckage and burst plasma. Her body was no longer constrained by human limits. She had become something else, faster, sharper, unbound by fear. She boarded the Zerthan Cradle, the last remaining dreadnought in the Zarketh Central Line. Alone, they watched her enter. 36. Zarketh soldiers waited on the other side. Only she walked out, covered in their blood. Zor stared from the bridge of the Vez Karun, shaking. Not with rage now, but with something far colder. Dread. "They've unmade us," Tron said beside him, his voice thin. "Every assumption we held, every belief in our superiority, the humans. They didn't survive our invasion." He turned. They transcended it. All across the Dominion fleet, emergency signals lit up, ships requesting retreat, units begging for surrender codes, AI cores going silent. The unified war machine that had crushed 100 civilizations was cracking irrevocably. In Earth was still rising. The Vengeance launched a final volley. A coordinated barrage in an impossible pattern, three-dimensional, multi-vectored, accelerated beyond known reaction time. It folded through space in silence, bypassing shields and armor. It didn't target weapons. It didn't target engines. It targeted command, the top-level Zarketh officers. The elite minds guiding the Dominion from orbit. Gone. In milliseconds. Pull. You was out, Valzor bellowed. Retreat. Regroup. We can still. His words stopped as the Oathkeeper broadcast one final message. Your time ends now. This is not revenge. This is correction. And then the Vengeance and Oathkeeper moved together for the first time, firing in perfect synchronization. Twin beams of quantum-bonded energy lanced forward, connecting with the core of the Zarketh flagship cluster. The effect was instantaneous. A rift tore open. Not into hyperspace, but sub-thought. A place where logic fractured, where minds unspooled, where identity ceased. The Zarketh fleet collapsed into its ships, twisting into nothing, caught in a storm of memory and math. One by one, their lights went dark. Within minutes, the Zarketh fleet, once a symbol of universal dominance, was gone. Not just destroyed. Undone. Silence fell. Above Earth, the only remaining lights were human. Colonel Rousseau watched it from a secure bunker outside Anchorage, Alaska. Streams of data scrolled across his screen. Readouts, orbital telemetry, the final death tolls. It was done. He took a long breath, then slowly exhaled. Status? He asked. A technician wiped tears from her face. No casualties, all helix fragments stable. Revenant 1 returned to dock. And the Dominion? She shook her head. There is no Dominion anymore. High above, the Oathkeeper shut down its primary weapons and began broadcasting a beacon, not of conquest, but of warning. To the galaxy. To anyone who might think of Earth as weak, as forgotten, as prey. Revenant 1's final transmission scrolled across human and alien channels alike. You wanted to know what we are. We are the species that learns. We are the broken who rebuild. And when cornered, we become the storm. From the edges of the solar system, hidden probes and alien scouts began pulling away, retreating into the darkness. They had seen enough. Earth was no longer a curiosity. It was a crucible. And humanity, after centuries of silence, was once again. A name whispered in fear. The galaxy would not forget. The stars burned quieter in the days that followed. What was left of the Zarketh Dominion drifted in fragments, shattered hulls, silent ships, and echoing distress signals unanswered in the void. Their empire, once spanning 6 spiral arms of the galactic disk, now consisted of memories and ghosts. Their command structures were gone. Their hierarchy dissolved. Their fear, however, endured. It spread first to the Kelp Republic, who had once mocked Earth's primitive digital warfare, until their listening posts picked up traces of the Oathkeeper's mindweb. They deleted centuries of data out of sheer paranoia. Then to the Mycathi swarm, whose biotic fleets fed on lesser civilizations. They recalled every tendril from human borders the moment Revenant 1's footage leaked footage of her walking through plasma fire as if it were wind. And then, slowly to everyone else, humanity had not just survived. It had warned them, back on Earth beneath a crystal blue sky. Colonel Rousseau stood atop a windswept hill overlooking the Pacific Defense Array. The land was quiet again. Children played in cities no longer braced for orbital bombardment. Emergency protocols had relaxed. The skies were filled with shuttles carrying food, medicine, and rebuilding teams, not warheads. He looked up at the clouds. The Vengeance was already cloaked again, drifting quietly behind the moon. The Oathkeeper had returned to its slumber in Jupiter's shadow, its quantum drives powering down with the final words of its war log. Operation, proof of life, complete. Beside him stood Revenant 1, her black armor reflecting the morning sun, helmet tucked under her arm. You don't have to stay, Rousseau said gently. She shook her head. I never left. He looked at her, really looked. Not at the myth. Not at the weapon. At the woman. You remember them, don't you? He asked. She nodded. Everyone. Every death. Every silence between battles. I remember when Earth was on fire, and I remember what it took to put it out. You didn't have to come back, he whispered. She turned to him. That's the point of coming back. A soft chime broke the moment, an incoming galactic transmission. Rousseau stepped to the console nearby, opened the link, and watched as a dozen alien faces flickered into existence. Some organic, others digital, many unfamiliar, but all of them ... Respectful, Colonel Rousseau, the lead ambassador of the Athari Union spoke, his tendrils subdued. We request a re-evaluation of Earth's status within the Galactic Accord. Another voice followed, high-pitched and translated from sonic pulses. You are no longer an anomaly, you are a constant. The offers flooded in treaties, reparations, embassy invitations, tech exchange programs. That had once been denied, because now the galaxy knew the stories of humanity's desperation and savagery during the old wars had once been treated as cautionary myths. Now they were history. Broadcast from satellite to satellite, system to system, Revenant One had become a legend. The Oathkeeper a curse. The vengeance a name whispered like death itself. Rousseau turned to Revenant One. What do we tell them? She gazed out over the ocean, then answered with quiet certainty. We tell them the truth. That Earth remembers. Far across the galaxy, in a shattered war chamber on the ruins of Zarketh Prime, the last surviving High Inquisitor, once feared across 7 systems, now sat in silence. He watched a looped feed from Earth's orbit. A Terran child waving up at a passing shuttle. The child paused, then held up a toy figure, jet black, armored, faceless. A replica of REV-ENAD-1. The Inquisitor's aides asked, should we retaliate, rebuild, reignite? He only shook his head. No, he said, voice trembling. They gave us mercy, not because they are weak, but because they are strong enough to choose restraint. They are not conquerors, he whispered. They are reminders. And so Earth's legend solidified, not as destroyers, but as survivors, builders of memory, keepers of wrath. And in the deepest corners of the galaxy, where cold minds schemed and old powers stirred, one truth became gospel. Do not provoke the Terrans. They will warn you once. They will endure your worst. But when they rise ... you will remember why the galaxy once feared the humans, and still should, back on Earth. Rousseau walked through a park now planted over what used to be a military encampment. Children played among tall trees grown from war ash. The air was filled with birdsong and laughter. REV-ENANT-1 stood beneath one of those trees, now watching, no longer needing to fight. We're safe for now, Rousseau said beside her. She didn't smile, but there was something softer in her eyes. For now. They stood in silence for a moment longer before she spoke again. You know this won't be the end. No, he agreed. But when it comes again ... we'll be ready. She turned away, walking into the trees, because the war was over, but the watch had just begun.